bubble battle in the Big Ten between Indiana and Ohio State. It's hard to know where these teams stand in terms of whether this is a true like cut line team that wins is in, team that loses is out. But the way both of these teams are playing and where they sit resume wise, that could very well be the case when they meet in Assembly Hall on Saturday. Dion will dive into each team here in a second, but that's the main storyline. What's the biggest X factor that you're looking at that could potentially swing this game one way or the other?
I, I guess it's just always and forever going to be Umar Ballo. And kind of just like, what version of this Indiana team are you going to get?
Yep.
Are you going to get the team that like wants to be there? Or are you going to get the team that doesn't? Um, I said it coming out the Oregon game. I still kind of feel like Indiana's closer to on the right side of the bubble at the moment. Um, I might be way wrong on that, but I feel like if they can go into the Big Ten tournament, if they can leave the Big Ten tournament with a win or two, I feel like they're in a good position here to kind of make some things shake. That's really all you can ask for at this point in the season if you're Indiana. So I think that's a good position for them to be in. What I will say though, I don't think they're gonna make anything shake at the Big Ten tournament. So I
Mm.
do think when it's all said and done, they'll be on the wrong side of the bubble.
Bracket Matrix has both of them as 11 seeds going
Okay.
to Dayton. Like that's where both are at right now. The way it's projected right now, one would play Oklahoma, one would play Boise State. The way it looks on the Matrix as of recording on Friday morning, things could change obviously with that, but I think whoever wins this game, obviously, it feels better about where they're at. I like the Umar Ballo shout because one, Indiana seems to go as he goes. When he plays well, Indiana is the best version of itself, and when he doesn't, they're not. And they don't win the kind of games. But I also like it from the standpoint of Ohio State does not have a lot of good big men, really any good big men. It is Aaron Bradshaw, or we're going to play real small. And as volatile as Ballo can be, Bradshaw is even more volatile.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, interestingly enough, Kentucky could use Aaron Bradshaw. Arkansas could use Aaron Bradshaw.
Yeah, yeah. Sean Stewart playing down there has been okay. He's been a good rebounder. He's used his athleticism to block some shots, but he's not like he's a 6'9" like kind of face up four man.
Mhm.
He's not your true post guy. And so if Mike Woodson's going to play the way that Indiana fans hate the way that he plays, throwing all those big men out, this is a game where I think that could work and you could dominate the paint. But you have to rebound the ball like the way you should instead of the way you have been. You have to be better in the paint the way you should as opposed to the way you have been. And that's been Indiana's issue is, on paper they should be great in all those areas, when in actuality they're just average.
Yeah, I mean they don't do a lot of things well. Uh, that it just is what it is. They don't do many things well. Um, they're supposed to. They've shown flashes of it. Ludicrous statement here, and I get it, but that Purdue game was one of the more impressive performances I think any team has had in the
Yeah.
country all season. Like that's the Indiana that it put it like this. There was a moment in that game. Braden Smith, I get it. He doesn't really come out. Phenomenal player. I think he's the best point guard in the country. There was a moment in that game where Purdue had to bring him out because Indiana found a way to get to him when he was on defense like no other team has. He couldn't really hide. Um, and so they had to pull him. They went on a run, brought him back in, and Purdue continued to go on a run. Don't get me wrong. But Indiana was able to find stuff and exploit weaknesses within phenomenal basketball players at points within this season. Not any team can do that,
Mm.
but it's only been at points. It has not been consistent, unfortunately. Um, the coaching search, the name we did a short on it yesterday. Everybody should go watch. The names in it are crazy to me. Um, I'm not incredibly impressed with the names that they're tossing around in terms of who they're interested in. But what I will say is this: um, I was dead wrong about Kentucky and Mark Pope, the hire about it. I will say like I do think I'm right in saying that like that wasn't their first choice. It was a little bit of like the hey, here's our desperation. Like hey, do you want to come on down, Mark Pope? And it worked. So it might work for Indiana too. It might work for Indiana too. You don't always need the crazy big name to have the success that you're looking for at a big program.
Correct. That's the one that wins the press conference,
Right.
but you'd rather win games than just win the press conference.
Well, I think Indiana just wants to win something.
That's fair. That is fair. The one thing I'm glad you brought up that Purdue game because in that Purdue game was probably Braden Smith's worst, one of his worst games of the season. He had 8 points, 5 assists, 6 turnovers in that game against Indiana's defense. Indiana's going to do the same kind of thing against Bruce Thornton because he is the proverbial straw that stirs the Ohio State drink. He does everything for them. Do you think Indiana can slow him down the same kind of way, or is this kind of a game where you're looking for Bruce Thornton to put on something of a Superman cape and be that guy for the Buckeyes?
um, that's a good question. What does Bruce? So the difference between Bruce Thornton and Braden Smith to me is aggression. Um, I felt this way watching the Purdue game. Braden Smith also takes himself out the game from time to time. Um, Bruce Thornton's not going to do that. So that's the difference. Like I don't think you can. And this isn't me saying Bruce Thornton's better than Braden Smith by any means. I'm just saying like if Bruce Thornton goes into a game saying, "Hey, I'm going to shoot 17 shots," it does not matter how many defenders you throw at him. He's going to continue to shoot 17 shots. And I think when you're on a team that can focus solely on you, you kind of have to have that mindset a little bit. So I don't know if they can stop Bruce Thornton in the manner that they stopped Braden Smith, just because they're two different players, mindset wise, but they can make it really hard on Bruce Thornton. They can slow Bruce Thornton down. And I think subsequently you can make him remove everybody else from the game, which is something Braden Smith would never do. He might remove himself from the game, but he'll swing that rock and let everybody else kind of get
Yeah.
open looks.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting too that Ohio State's recent run has included some good Micah Parrish games and some good
Mm-hmm.
Devin Royal games when Royal had kind of been up and down over the last month or so. I think those guys have to continue to play well, the same way like Indiana's quote unquote others. I don't know if Indiana has any like real star to make other people the others, but the role players to play well because that's key for everybody. But one of the reasons these two teams are in the positions that they are in is because they have not gotten consistent role play. They
Right.
have not gotten consistent secondary contributors. So that'll be something watching this game as well. Should be close. All the metrics have this being close. They're right next to each other, bracket matrix, as I just said. Ken Palm has Indiana winning this 75 to 74, a 1 point win for the Hoosiers at Assembly Hall on Saturday. Have to imagine this being in Bloomington making a difference. Who do you have winning this game?
Indiana. I actually think like it. Ohio State has 11 seats, kind of crazy. I didn't think that was gonna be. I did not have that on my bingo card. Um, Indiana, I do think is an 11 seed. Like I said, I do believe they're on the right side of the bubble here, barely, clearly, like barely. But I think they're a pretty good team. I think they've been playing well recently. I think they have more to give than in Ohio State does. I also think they just have a little bit more margin for error. Ohio State kind of has Indiana's a roller coaster. We have no idea why. Ohio State is a roller coaster that we paid to be
That's a good way to describe it.
on.
That's a good way to describe it. I think the paying to be on factor is Bruce Thornton, Mike Parrish, and Devin Royal, and that's why I'm going to pick the Buckeyes to win this game.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a 1-2 possession game. It's going to be pretty close, but if it's close, we've seen this with Indiana time and time again, including against Oregon this week when
Yeah.
they fell apart down the stretch. I don't trust them to win those games. I don't trust Ohio State that much either, but I trust them a little bit more. I trust Bruce Thornton a little bit more than I trust anybody on Indiana. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the Buckeyes.
No, that's completely fair. I don't trust anybody on Indiana either. Uh, I just Indiana's floor is a little bit higher than Ohio State's floor, which is crazy to say. That's crazy to say.
Well, this is an Indiana team that was like top 15, top 20 in the preseason, and again, we're talking about them on the bubble, probably needing to win a couple Big Ten tournament games. Excuse me.
Yeah.
To looking for a coach.
Maybe though. I think there's a world. There's a world here. You could convince me more Indiana goes in as an 11 seed and beats a six if they have to play in the first four, or I guess isn't it like the first eight? It's called the first four, but how many games do they play at this point?
Four. It's first four. It's 8 teams, but 4 games.
Got you, first four. But if they have to play in that, then if they had a full week off, I think the more time Indiana has off, the worse they're gonna look.
If Indiana gets in, I could very easily see the scenario. When did this happen? I gotta pull up some stuff here. I could very easily see. I think it was Woodson's first year where they had to go on a run in the Big Ten tournament. They beat Michigan and Illinois to basically earn a spot in the NCAA tournament. Went to the first four, beat Wyoming in the first four. And everyone was like, "Oh, like Indiana's back, Pike Woodson's got it, blah blah blah," and then they lost 82-53 in the first round against St. Mary's. Like to me, if Indiana got there, that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I can see. I also what I also can see though, I can see the complete opposite. If you told me Indiana gets in, is able to take a deep breath, everyone knows Woody's gone. You're probably looking around like, hey, we're about to hire Bronwell from Clemson, so the rest of y'all are probably gone too. Um,
If
and
Indiana hired Brad Brownell from Clemson, that would be the most like boring hire.
it would be quite literally, and I mean this respectfully, Indiana fans, that's going to be one of the worst hires. Like it might work out, but on paper, that's still one of like
you
that's
would
still
you
one of the
would
worst hires.
you would win games, but Indiana fans would be very loud and hateful from April through December. And then you get to December and you're like, "Oh, we're
Would
decent.
they win
He
games?
knows what he's doing."
I mean, four turning appearances in 15 years. Would they win games?
Okay, not to divulge here.
We won't dive into that, but
Brad Brownell is a very very good X and O coach. I've been impressed with what he's done. He just has not always like wanted to recruit. And so if you have Indiana's NIL and the resources and you don't necessarily have to recruit, I think it could be okay.
maybe. I mean, we'll see. You
Yeah.
can't. I'll say this: you can't pull up to the Big Ten with some of his Clemson rosters and have the same success.
No.
That's just the harsh reality of it. But if everyone knows where they're going, coaching direction, they're able to relax and breathe. I could see them going on a run the way North Carolina did when North Carolina went to the Natty. Like North Carolina snuck in that Natty. Um, and then just I mean, stuck in the tournament and then kind of just went crazy that year. And then that kind of locked Hubert in. Not that Hubert was going to get fired. That was like year one of Hubert, but still, like the at North Carolina, like you hear the voices a little bit, no matter when it is. So I could see them losing in the first round, getting smoked. I could also see them making a run very easily too.
Just go ahead and clip this, Indiana fans. Dion thinks you're going to the national title game.
Maybe. I mean, I listen. I picked it preseason.